Now, even though this drone is almost 3 years old, this thing is still an absolute rock star. We have great transmission, really good camera, but there's been so many new updates now, of course, with the Mini 3, Mini 3 Pro, and of course now the Mini 4 Pro. And for those that did pick up this drone a little while back, is that Mini 4 the next drone that you might want to upgrade to? Possibly want to go even higher than that. But in this video, just want to talk to you about some of those main differences here between the Mini 2 and the all-new Mini 4 Pro. Now, before we get into the differences, I do want to talk about a lot of things that they still have in common, because that's definitely a good thing to know. Even though we have a lot of new drones, there's still a lot of pluses here on both of these, and let's talk about those real quick. Now, the first thing they have in common, of course, sub 250. So depending on where you live, if you're over 250, you need to register. You might have to register your drone. Under 250, you don't. That's the reason why this drone became so popular, is that if it's under 250 in most locations, you don't necessarily have to register your drone with the FAA. Next, we'll talk about speed, and the great thing is both of these have about the same speed, whether you're ascending or descending, or you're flying at horizontal, sea level, they have about the same speed. So big difference there. If you're looking at jumping up to the higher ones like the Air and the MAVIC, those fly a lot faster, they ascend and descend a lot faster. Next is photos. Now, they actually both shoot at 12 megapixel. There is a 48 megapixel option on the Mini 4, but technically they still shoot 12 megapixels, and they both shoot JPEG and RAW. And finally, last thing they have in common is just the size. I mean, when you're talking about mini drones, something that's portable, easy to travel with, you're gonna want to grab a mini drone. Now, the Mini 4 Pro is a little bit bigger than the Mini 2, but not as big, of course, when you start jumping up to the Air lineup, the Air 3, MAVIC Pros. Now, those are a few things that they do have in common, but now let's jump over to the things that are definitely a big upgrade on the Mini 4 compared to something like the Mini 2. First one we'll talk about is the camera and camera sensor. We do have a larger sensor on the Mini 4 Pro, 1/1.3 inch CMOS sensor, where here on the Mini 2, we do have a 1/2.3 inch CMOS sensor. With a larger sensor, definitely going to get better quality in low light. But for me, it wasn't just the upgrade on the camera. That's a significant difference. The gimbal is actually a completely new design compared to the Mini 2. I'm really glad that they did change the gimbal from this setup over into the Mini 3, Mini 3 Pro setup. And of course, the Mini 4 Pro has that same gimbal configuration, but I'm glad they changed it, because if you've ever flown the Mini 2 and you're pointing straight down and you want to fly forward, there is a weird little twitch that happens. The camera kind of twitches whenever you're going at a higher rate of speed if the camera's pointed too far down. And I think that was a pretty common thing with the Mini 2, the Mini 1, the Mini SC. And they fixed that twitch when they changed this whole gimbal setup, as well as the new design here at the very front. Now allows you to point your camera upward, where here on the Mini 2, you weren't able to point upward because you're also getting blocked by the nose of the drone. Next, we'll talk about, of course, is obstacle avoidance. The Mini 2 does not have any obstacle avoidance. It does have these landing sensors down here at the very bottom. We have the landing sensors here, actually upgraded landing sensors here on the Mini 4 Pro, but we do have that 360 omnidirectional obstacle avoidance sensing. So if you are the type to fly your drone and you wanted to be able to have obstacle avoidance, you know, left and right, forward and back, you now have that here on the Mini 4 Pro, where here, if you're flying this type of drone with no obstacle avoidance, you just want to make sure you're above the trees, away from buildings, because you have no sensors here on the Mini 2. That's one of the reasons why we also don't have those certain intelligent flight modes on the Mini 2. We don't have the ability to follow. You don't have the ability to track subjects. You do have that here with the Mini 4 Pro, because we have these vision camera sensors. Next, we'll talk about flight time and batteries. Now, with the Mini 2, we have this battery right here, rated for 31 minutes, and we have a 34-minute battery rated on the Mini 4 Pro, but you also have the option to get the larger capacity battery, which will give you 45 rated minutes. Those extra minutes, that extra battery life, is definitely going to help you out here on the Mini 4 Pro, because of the fact that if your drone is struggling or having to work harder, you're gonna burn through the batteries. So you definitely want the ability to have a higher capacity battery to be up in the air a little bit longer. Next, we'll talk about is video transmission. Now, with the Mini 2, you would use something like this, the RC-N1 remote control. You're gonna need to put your phone on this one, where here on the Mini 4 Pro, we do have the option to use a similar remote, which is the RC-N2, or this one here, which is the RC2. Now, when it comes to range, we do have the O2 or OcuSync 2 technology on the Mini 2, giving you about 10 kilometers in distance with this setup. Now here on the Mini 4 Pro, we have the O4 technology, giving us about 20 kilometers in range between your drone and the remote control. Next update we'll talk about is the true vertical shooting. You are able to turn that camera from horizontal to vertical, and with the camera changing, you are now able to get true vertical 4K video. We don't have that option here on the Mini 2. So if vertical content is something that you like to make, you can still do vertical by just cropping in after the fact. But here, if you wanted to have a self-contained video, you are able to do that with something like the Mini 4 Pro. Next upgrade we have on the Mini 4 Pro that we don't have here on the Mini 2 is we do have different color profiles on the Mini 4 Pro, where here you're pretty much just shooting in standard or normal mode, where if you do some post-processing on your footage, you do have options here with HLG as well as 10-bit D-Log-M on the Mini 4 Pro. Now those are just some of the upgrades of the Mini 4 Pro that I highlighted here over the Mini 2. There's definitely a lot more, but if you have the Mini 2 and you've been flying it for the past couple years, and you know that you just don't do these things, you don't need obstacle avoidance, because I fly out into a field and I'm always flying above something and I'm not really around other obstacles. So obstacle avoidance would do nothing for me. Or if I don't have the need to track, I don't want to follow myself on a bike, I don't want to follow a car, then you don't necessarily need to always think about some of those features on here. It's nice to have, but if you know you just aren't using those features, then you might just be fine with the Mini 2. Taking the obstacle avoidance and the active track away, it really comes down to, am I happy with the picture quality? Do I want maybe a little bit higher quality coming out of my videos and photos that the Mini 4 Pro can offer? And if that's the case, then maybe I might even just move over to the Mini 3 if you really had a use case for the quality of video and photos. But if you were the Mini 2 owner and you're like, man, it would be nice to have that updated gimbal, a little bit higher quality, but really open up the obstacle avoidance and active track features that you just don't have here, then of course jump over here to the Mini 4 Pro. Huge shout out to all my Mini 2 owners out there. I still absolutely love this drone. We just, of course, 3 years later have a lot of different options if you feel like you have the need to use them. Hopefully you guys got some value from this video, and if you did, a big like would be much appreciated. And if you want a lot more information about the Mini 4 Pro, do I get the Mini 4 Pro or do I get the Air 3? I have all those videos. I'll list them either here or one more over here. This is Ultra Anastasio with FlytPath.com. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.